It was a church secretly started by a slave here in Virginia. And over time, it grew to more than 500 members. Today, it has a historic legacy, helping to bring black and white Americans together to ring a church bell for freedom. Ephraim Graham brings us this story.
On this sunny February day, hope and healing bring people from all across the country to a tiny church in Williamsburg, Virginia. To understand why, we need to go back 240 years to the founding of the church and the nation. The man who started First Baptist Church is found at a tavern, of all places. They're popular meeting spots in Williamsburg, Virginia's state capital in 1776. The man is named Gowan and works at the King's Arms Tavern. And although a slave, he's one of America's first ordained black ministers.
He hears the patriots talking, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and many others. They're passing things like the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which includes a free exercise of religion clause.
In 1776, it was illegal for more than 5 slaves to gather together without permission from their slave masters. So First Baptist Church began in secrecy, somewhere in these woods.
The white society saw religious meetings of slaves as threatening, as inspirational toward rebelling or attempting to loosen the bonds of slavery.
Gowan's name first appears in the historical record in 1779, but not in a positive sense. The Virginia Gazette prints an ad accusing him of stealing a horse, a hanging offense. Fortunately, he is never charged, and over the next few years, his congregation grows to more than 200 members. 1793 proves to be a watershed year for Gowan, despite accusations of involvement in a multi-state slave rebellion plot. He gains membership for his church in the mostly white Dover Baptist Association and is freed from slavery as shown in this deed. It is the first time we see the surname he chose for himself, Pamphlet.
Why do you think he chose Pamphlet?
That's been a subject of intense interest, as you might imagine. We don't find anyone else, white or black, named Pamphlet. I happened to run across a compilation of pamphlets from the 18th century that had to do with every subject imaginable. And it occurred to me, did he adopt that name because he knew of the effectiveness of pamphlets circulating on various topics?
Sweet Jesus. Pamphlet's now 500-member congregation meets in a wooded area called Raccoon Chase on the outskirts of Williamsburg. Then, around 1805, a white neighbor hears their worship and offers them the use of his carriage house in downtown Williamsburg. Gowan Pamphlet dies within 2 years.
His legacy is determination to keep this church alive, to bring it the respect it deserved, and to persevere in the face of all kinds of adversity.
He was determined that his church wasn't going to exist in the shadows. It was going to.
It was going to be in the open.
Some 50 years later, First Baptist dedicates their first church building on the same property. Within a short time, they acquired their bell. 100 years later, in 1956, they moved to their present building, but the bell is not installed properly and soon becomes inoperable.
Let freedom reign.
Although the bell remains silent throughout the civil rights era, the church does not. They host activists like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. This year, to celebrate the church's 240th anniversary, the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation takes on the task of restoring the 500-pound bell. In light of heightened racial conflict in places like Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland, a nationwide campaign begins called Let Freedom Ring Challenge, inviting Americans of all races to register to ring the bell for freedom throughout the month of February.
I will ring the bell for hope.
for justice for immigrants.
For the little boys and little girls whose brown skin is made to make them feel less than.
That brings us to today's celebration.
And so we come to ring the bell, to drive out the spirits of division and those practices that are causing us to forget that we are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first to ring the bell are a family who knows a lot about racial reconciliation. Descendants of Thomas Jefferson by two women, his wife, Martha, and her half-sister, slave Sally Hemings.
It was just a powerful moment. You know, you could feel the spirit move inside with so much hope and energy in the building, you know.
When you cross that line, that's where the good stuff happens. You really find out what other people feel and think. You walk in their shoes, and you see that it's better together than apart.
People, black and white, came together and found common ground, and that's the great challenge. How do we move from racial battleground to economic common ground to moral higher ground?
We meet with the pastor 2 days later, amid a steady stream of bell ringers.
How did things go here from a broken bell, as we hear it now, in a small church?
Yes.
To this nationwide cause that we're seeing?
Yes. Well, the idea just began to surface that we can repair this bell looking at the backdrop of our nation. Let's encourage a new start. You had the birth of the nation, you had the slaves, let's merge that together because we want one America. And so the idea came to repair the bell, commit ourselves to the principles and the values that made this nation great.
With that thought in mind, Pastor Davis rang the bell Monday with his family.
I made a connection with the past, and I also made a commitment to myself that I'm gonna do all I can to make sure that those who suffered, bled, and died, that the work that they have done to get us to where we are now would not be in vain.
As for me, I ring the bell for my 97-year-old grandmother and my ancestors who made my life possible. Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Williamsburg, Virginia.